Hello and welcome to another live instalment of the Empire of the Cop podcast, and what a special one we've got for you here again today. We've got two special guests, Rick Elliott and the Anfield Rap's Neil Atkinson, to discuss their highly anticipated documentary, Jürgen, and we'll be looking specifically, of course, part one, The Challenge. We've also got Peter Kenny-Jones, and I'll be your host, Farrell Keeling. Neil, thanks again for coming on. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. Overjoyed to be here, to be honest with you. Very, very excited. Good to talk about Jürgen and any other matters that are arising. So thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Every opportunity. I mean, it's a phenomenal documentary, and I'll just leave Pete with the first question.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you again for joining us, Neil. And yeah, so obviously we've all had a little watch at the first episode, and yeah, every Liverpool fan on the planet adores Jürgen Klopp. Obviously, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I think we don't need to go into too much detail. We all know what they are. But just the main question is, why now? Why is the documentary now? Why did you focus on doing it and bringing it out at this period?
So there's a practical answer and there's a romantic answer. So the practical answer is that 12 months ago, I was bouncing around our office saying to everyone, my God, we need something for during the World Cup, you know. And Fuad Hassan, who's directed the documentary, a couple of months later, after I've been doing everyone's head in for ages, said he had a certain idea around Jürgen and looking at Jürgen's career. And Fuad's why now is the more romantic answer, which is because it's 7 years at Liverpool. So it's this idea of looking at what he's done thematically. So it's 7 years at Mainz, 7 years at Dortmund, and 7 years at Liverpool. And what similarities are there within there, and what differences are there within there, and how do you tell that story? And then that sort of took pace more and more. And obviously, we're working on the planning of it, not quite the execution of it in terms of shooting it, but the planning of it as last season begins to, come to a crescendo, and you begin to wonder whether or not Jürgen Klopp's Liverpool could win a quadruple. And within that, Jürgen himself seems really, really important. He's actually, obviously he's the football manager, but what I mean is it's him who has the energy around Brentford. It's him who normally when managers are asked about quadruples, they give you all the reasons why it'll never happen. But Jürgen's attitude was, well, it's going to be hard, but let's go for it because what else are we doing? And being able to sort of look into where that energy comes from and how that energy demonstrated itself in other places is what really, really appealed. And then from there, the thing spiraled. We try to work with loads and loads of trust at the Anfield Rap where we can. And we backed Fuad to do a good job. And before I know where I am, really, he's got 35 interviews lined up and ended up going to Germany 4 times. It was never really budgeted for, but we thought, well, we'll back him because, we can see the quality of what's going on and the thought of what's going on, and we end up with what you've seen so far, which is the first episode in a very Anfield Rap way. You can't watch episode 2 because it's not finished yet. It's out on Monday, but they're cutting it together right now. And I was having a conversation with Fu this morning about the run, the sort of the overall thematic arch for episode 3. Not to give too much away, we've got the footage and they're pulling it together, and they've got an overarching idea as to what's in each episode and how it's going to work, but those bits of storytelling are still being worked on. They're still very, very live indeed. So I haven't seen episode 2 yet, let alone anyone else.
Sorry, it's a great. It's the first episode. It feels like I'm just sort of reviewing Star Wars after watching episode 4, which is a bit weird. But
well, some people did.
If you're old enough, then yeah. But yeah, it's. I mean, you've alluded to it there. Just like how much of a Herculean task is it to sort of like to put together? Because it must be like just so much footage, like interviews in different languages. Just how hard has it been to put together so far?
It's been a lot of work, but the key part of it is that when you sort of take a project like this, firstly, it's backing people, both in terms of the people that you're going to interview. You've got to back contributors at all times, but it's also backing our people. Back the guys who've been doing film work for us now. If we go all the way back to 2017, 2018, we've been filming things at the Anfield Rap and backing them to firstly be able to do that to a certain standard and then raise that standard, which is what they've done. And then the second thing, which is really important in terms of backing the process, is trusting that we've all learned storytelling. We've all got storytelling instincts. We've got those storytelling instincts because of the work we've been doing at the Anfield Rap. We anyway right now do certainly during whilst there's 2-3 games a week. We're doing 10 videos a week and 12-14 podcasts a week. Some weeks. When you think about that for a second, it's a lot of work, but it's also a massive grounding. You get to know what you're about, you get to know what works, you get to know what doesn't. So a key part of all of this really is backing our people and backing our experience to pull this together. What's been toughest really, and this is why, even people who every day haven't been contributing to this documentary have been contributing to it, is because keeping the whole operation running, where we're still doing those shows. Liverpool are playing, 2 games every single week, playing every single midweek. And our customers, I'd like to hope, the people who sign up on the app and who watch and listen to all the stuff won't have noticed the join. And we've been doing this at the same time underneath. And that's where the real Herculean effort is. But it's been everyone pulling together. That's not just Fuad, Jordan, Sam. That's everyone, Ash. Everyone's been sort of pulling together around that to make that happen as smoothly as possible. So, and there's other things around this as well. A couple of people have said they feel it's the sort of thing that could have been on Netflix. And that's, it's really high praise and it's really generous. But the flip side of that is that if I take this to Netflix last March, even if I convince them to do it, Fuad doesn't get to direct it. He may not even get to be first AD. But again, we want to back our people and give them opportunities. I'm really lucky. I'm 41 years old and I work in an office full of, broadly speaking, young people in Liverpool city centre. But we've got those young people because we back them and we support them and we try to give them opportunities, not just in terms of the job itself, but the nature of what that job is and what they can do. So Fuad's directing it and Jordan's editing it, and Jordan's editing episode 2 right now. And Jordan's a really good editor, but he's never edited anything like this before. But we backed him to be able to do it, and we also backed him to know what Liverpool supporters want. Jordan himself isn't one. He's from Northern Ireland and he supports a team over there, Linfield. But he is here. He understands what Liverpool supporters want because he's been doing this job, and he's able to therefore pull this together, knowing that that's the essence of what the people want, and he can deliver it for them.
Now, going back to the documentary as well, specifically, I mean, you've seen Fuad's travels have taken him through Glatton, Frankfurt, Mainz, Dortmund, Liverpool, obviously places that matter a great deal to Jürgen Klopp, and specifically with his formative years. I just wanted to get the Anfield Wraps and your perspectives specifically about sort of the parallels drawn sort of between these places in terms of the fan bases, the financial circumstances, particularly between Liverpool and Dortmund, the status as a form of sort of big power being in need of rejuvenation, and I suppose the role it has in keeping Klopp in Liverpool, specifically extending his contract, because obviously this is the longest he's held a job. So Liverpool holds a certain attraction above all else.
I think the Liverpool thing is Jürgen, just to in the most basic way, if we try to, and it's very important because this is what Klopp does himself all the time, to always place the humanity back into Jürgen Klopp, because that's how Jürgen is a deeply sort of human person, and he very much sees the humanity in others. Is that there wasn't another move? Like I still think he might extend again. To be honest, Jürgen, and the reason why is because if he doesn't do this, it's all but semi-retirement. It's the semi-retirement of international management. That's it. That's the decision he's making, because he's not going to go. He's not going to go and be the sort of manager who goes to a club where he's likely to only get 2 years. He's going to want to be the sort of manager who goes to a club where he gets to see it as a project and invest in a sense of place. And there's no others now left. And I don't mean that in a sort of dramatic way. Of course, there are others. But what I mean is he's already gone through the graduation process. There's a reason why both Klopp and Dortmund's time together becomes exhausted. And it's that he can't continually rejuvenate Dortmund over and over again because of the inherent sort of issues they've got with competing with Bayern Munich and so on and so forth. I don't think he sees that at Liverpool. I think he sees Liverpool as a project that he can sort of repeatedly rejuvenate. And what would be the purpose of going anywhere else? The only place he could go theoretically that was bigger is arguably Real Madrid. And that's it. That's it. It's Real Madrid or nothing. But Real Madrid, the manager, is not central to everything, does not build the entire culture, and does not sort of create a philosophy within there. That's not how Real Madrid operate. And it's not any way they've operated for a long, long time. So this is it. This is the biggest job of Jürgen's life. And I think that's the reason why he's stuck on for longer. And then there is the relationship between people and place. Mainz is, we now know Mainz is a football club, not least because of Jürgen Klopp and a little bit because of Wolfgang Frank. But it is because of Frank and Klopp that they absolutely put Mainz on the map. Then there's the Dortmund move, and Dortmund's, that's absolutely fascinating. And as you say, it did have this sort of fallen giant aspect to it, but it's also got the biggest ground in Germany. So, within there, you also know that it's so important to the people, that that's the nature of what Dortmund is as a place. And he can buy into that. And then, we know what we think is positive and exceptional about Liverpool, and he can buy into that as well. And there's the similarities and differences between these places. Jürgen Klopp created Mainz as a footballing institution. As I say, Wolfgang Frank has a massive impact on that, on Jürgen Klopp. But it's Klopp who gets the energy of the place of Mainz into that ground. He doesn't need to do that in Dortmund, but he does need to rejuvenate, get corporate partners back. In episode 2, you will hear about how he rang some himself, made those phone calls and said, you're going to see something. There's going to at least be something to see when I run Dortmund. And, you know, he had to rejuvenate in that way. And then when he gets to Liverpool, he doesn't have to build the idea of who Jürgen Klopp is, because we're able to look at his trophy-winning successes at Dortmund, but he does still need to re-energise and reconnect a supporter base that was from a period that I think extends from the sale, say, to Hicks and Gillette in 2007, all the way through to the exit of Brendan Rodgers, with peaks and troughs within there, I hasten to add, but which has just felt like it's taken a hell of a lot of blows, body blows. And that's why, you know, one of the key moments of Jürgen's tenure remains, and at the time there was some voices who pilloried it, is when he takes the players to the Kop after the 2-2 draw against West Brom. That was such a key moment for him in how he viewed what he was trying to achieve at Liverpool. That, you know, the idea that the previous home game, I think it was, everyone walks out at 2-1 down against Crystal Palace. Jürgen says he's never felt so lonely in his life. We're in a similar situation against West Bromwich Albion with 15 to go. Everyone hangs on. The whole ground's absolutely mad because the West Brom players were putting in some terrible tackles. Everyone's up. Everyone's on one. Origi gets a deflected 97th minute equaliser. And then there's the outpouring of emotion. And as I say, there was a lot of people I respect and admire, by the way, who talk and write about Liverpool, who said you shouldn't be doing this sort of thing after the 2-2 draw against West Brom. But Jürgen knew exactly what he was doing and why, but also knew the emotion of the moment. I've always laughed about the fact that the next home game we win, at the end, Lovren's desperate to come to the Kop end, and Jürgen has to say to him, no, mate, we're not doing that every week. It was just, I knew what I was doing last week. This week, don't worry about it so much. And that's always been there and been present. And that is a massive part of the story. And that was the job he had to do at Liverpool, which was a different job to what he had to do at Mainz and a different job to what he had to do at Dortmund.
Speaking of Dortmund and the ongoing story at Liverpool, if you don't mind, we just deviate quickly from the documentary. I know. Honestly,
that's why he's the host.
But oh dear God, earthquake. Whilst we're on the topic of Dortmund, of course, you had an interview with Christian Falk, Bundesliga transfer expert, of course, very, very good in his field, and spoke, of course, about the one man on every Liverpool fan's lips, which is Jude Bellingham. Just to get your sort of point of view, because I posed this sort of question to Pete yesterday, and we were looking at sort of, you know, Liverpool's war chest. I think the understanding is Liverpool want to bring in at least 2 midfielders across the next 2 transfer windows, but we don't know how the World Cup's going to further impact Bellingham's asking price. There's the competition to consider with the likes of Madrid, Chelsea, Manchester City, so on, so forth. Hypothetically, in your opinion, you know, if it came down to it and you put in a position where Liverpool we have to spend all of this on Jude Bellingham, a phenomenal talent, not bring in a single other midfielder and just risk it for the next season, or alternatively forego Bellingham, bring in 2, maybe 3 midfielders of lesser quality, lesser price. It's a difficult question, because I think obviously it puts us, depending on your point of view, in a difficult position in terms of our depth. But where would you be leaning towards?
I am always, and listen, there's there's been some extreme circumstances recently, but I am always amazed how many football supporters want their football clubs to have. And I think there's good reason for that, because when it goes badly wrong, as has happened to Liverpool this season, so you look at Liverpool this calendar year, Liverpool go through, I would argue, the first half of the calendar year, and I don't think they can find enough time on the pitch for a combination of James Milner, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, or Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. So Oxlade-Chamberlain doesn't even feature from March onwards. He's in some match day squads, but he doesn't play a game. Doesn't get any time on the pitch whatsoever. He plays the FA Cup 6th round, and you don't see him apart from that. The others that I've just named, you can also drop Taki Minamino in there as well to a certain extent. The point about this isn't what's the level of these players, although what I would point out is that the players I have named all get their opportunity to play against Southampton away and are part of a really good performance in a 2-1 win. But there is this thing, I think, where everyone's decided you need to have 9 or 10 centre mids. How many centre mids have Man City got? Man City have got the smallest squad in the league. Now, they've got a squad that's unbelievably resilient and doesn't get that many injuries, and that's a bit of a separate conversation. They don't play Jürgen Klopp-style football through the middle of the park. They look after the ball a little bit differently, and they exert themselves in different ways, and that's also a fair point. But there is this notion that if Liverpool don't do 3 footballers into the middle of the midfield who are at least worth 50 million quid next summer, they're absolutely kidding themselves. And I just don't think that stands up to any sort of degree of scrutiny whatsoever. One of the things that Christian Falk says is one of the reasons why Bellingham's really taken with the Liverpool project, on top of the Jürgen Klopp stuff and all the other stuff, is he can see exactly how he'll get loads and loads of games. which you may not necessarily be able to see at Madrid. Now, we might say, well, that's a bit laughable. We've seen how good he is during the World Cup. He's a phenomenal player. He'd be brilliant to play for anyone. But he still wants to know, we have a real sense that he's going to get time on the pitch. Now, allow for Bellingham and then say, you're doing Bellingham, but you're going to do another midfielder of 60 million. And that midfielder will also surely want assurances that he's going to get time on the pitch. Liverpool's fourth highest earner, I think it is, before we had anyone else in amongst this conversation, is Thiago. Sixth or seventh highest earners are Fabinho and Henderson. We're all, I believe, excited by Harvey Elliott. And there's a lot of Harvey Elliott chat about what the footballer that he could be for Liverpool. All these footballers have got to play. So if you're asking me, it's Bellingham or nothing, I'd say I'd take Bellingham. But the other part of this as well is that there appears to be a bit of this conversation where everyone's acting simultaneously like Keita, Chamberlain and Milner are absolutely useless on the one hand, and on the other hand is simultaneously acting as though they've all played 10 games so far this season as well, and we're going to lose them. So what on earth are we going to do? Where's the depth going to come from? Basically, I've contributed pretty much to Liverpool's league season so far as Naby Keita. Arguably a bit more because people like the podcasts. And so if you lose Naby Keita from what's been our current reality and you replace him with Jude Bellingham, let's say you just did that, you gave Chamberlain a new deal and you somehow convinced Milner to hang on and do 12 months more thankless running around the middle of midfield, would Liverpool be well better off? The answer is yes. Liverpool's underlying numbers at the minute are the third best in the league. They've had a bit of hard lines in some games, and they've actually not been great for a number of reasons, but mostly tactical/performance based in a couple of others. And they've had the hangover of last season in Paris. So if you just next summer did Keita out and Bellingham in, or Chamberlain out and Bellingham in, and you gave Naby Keita another 2-year extension, which I think Liverpool have missed the boat on, so don't get me wrong, would Liverpool be better? Yes, obviously they would be markedly better. So I do Bellingham because I think he could prove to be. You know, the one thing I think City have had over us for 10 years, I don't think it's just Jürgen Klopp's tenure, for 10 years, 12 years, is I think they've had the best midfielder in the country. In that, first it was Yaya Toure, and then it was Kevin De Bruyne. So the midfielder who's most able to change the way in which a football matches go, and they've had that, and we haven't. And not just that we haven't, but all the other football teams haven't. There's a period of time where you can have an N'Golo Kante chat, but apart from that, pretty much the league's defining midfielder has been Yaya Toure or Big Kev De Bruyne. That's it. That's the way in which it's worked. So I think the idea of Liverpool having one of them is good. But there's this other thing as well, which is everyone's decided that the players have got to be 50, 60 million quid. Lema is going on a free next summer. Asensio's just played games for Spain in the World Cup. He's available on a free and he can play in the front line or he can play in the midfield line. He scores a lot of goals from midfield. Lema, it looks as though he might be going to Bayern Munich, but, you know, Liverpool can sort that out. If Chamberlain, Keita and Milner all move on, I think that's a combined wage saving for Liverpool of about £370,000 a week from published figures. Well, that's money that you can use to go and get another footballer with. And then within that as well, you've got the idea that you've got young players knocking around. We all like Bačević. We all like Elliott. Some like Jones. I think Jones gets a tough trot. But, you know, he's more than able to be a good squad player for Liverpool, I think it's fair to say. So I think there's a thing that we do because we react as humans, but we decide that a position needs major surgery. Last summer, the summer of 2021, when we'd all felt that centre-half had become a crisis point and it needed major surgery, Liverpool just bought Konate. Didn't buy anyone else. And suddenly, you know, there was times where it felt like either Matip or Gomez or Konate himself weren't getting enough time on the pitch. There was only Van Dijk who arguably was. The others had to share the appearances. It just doesn't take much to change it, I think. And I think that we'd all love, I'd love Liverpool to have 12 world-class midfielders who are all vying for position who are always therefore really, really fresh. But then the manager, if he was here, would say, yeah, but they wouldn't have any rhythm because you just keep chopping and changing them every single game. The only other thing I think there might be a bit of an argument. Liverpool want to be more progressive with possession, I think, and they've tried to do that, changing the shape a little bit. So out of possession this year, Liverpool, at the start of the season, are getting close to something that looks a bit like 4-2-4. But what that becomes in practice is 2 centre-halves, 2 midfielders, and then the fullbacks join in pretty much, and you end up with almost 2-2-6. I wondered if there's a journey for Liverpool where they could play something that in possession is like 2-3-5, 2 centre-halves, as it was for us, 3 midfielders when it was Wijnaldum, Henderson, Milner, Wijnaldum, Henderson, Fabinho in there, even, you know, to an extent, Henderson, Fabinho and Thiago. So 2-3-5, and then the fullbacks go. I wonder if there's an argument that you play 2-3-5, but you want all of the 3 to be able to be really creative. So you maybe look at getting someone who's better at progressing the ball from the number 6 position, You look at someone like Bellingham, you've got Thiago. So you end up with 3 footballers across the middle of the pitch and who are genuine footballers. So you end up with more of a ball-playing number 6 than a destructive lighthouse number 6, which is what Fabinho is. I think Fabinho at his best, by the way, is a really good ball player, but I think we've seen less of that when he's been out of form this season. So is there a journey there where you could basically say, yeah, the way we're going to be more creative isn't by playing one more clear attacking midfielder. It's that we're going to have 3 midfielders who are capable of doing it all, so that we can shore games up as we go a little bit more. And I wonder if that's a journey to go on. So don't get me wrong, there's things in there. So is there a point, if they'd have bought Tchouaméni, the thing I've always wondered about, if they'd have bought Tchouaméni is, where would he have played? Who would he have played next to? What would the relationship have been? And how would that have led to the side remodelling? Because the thing we don't sort of talk about is, hypothetically, it's possible. I'm not saying I know anything, but it's possible that if they'd have bought Tchouaméni, they might have sold Fabinho, or might have thought, we'll give Fabinho 1 more year and then sell him on, because he's an asset within the squad. And if they did want to play with 3 more creative type midfielders, more midfielders who can be 6s and 8s at once, which I don't think you could describe Fabinho as, 3 who can do it all. Bellingham's a 6 and 8 and a 10. Thiago in a different way is a 6 and 8 and a 10. Harvey Elliott's an 8 and a 10. Carvalho, if he plays there, is an 8 and a 10. Jones, it's still not one of the reasons why people aren't sure what to make of Jones. They're still not sure. Henderson's a 6 and an 8. Milner's a 6 and an 8. It might be that they might want to say, can we have 3 who can do it all across the middle of the park? And then there's a bit of an argument to maybe move Fabinho on in that context, especially as you can still cash in on him. But to answer your overall question, I'd just do the great one, the potentially absolutely league dominating one, and you'll solve all the problems later on. And if your question is actually, would you rather do 3 at 30, 35 million average, or do 1 at 110 and work stuff out and take a couple of chances on either free transfers, young players, or risks? I'd do the 1 at 110 and take a few chances elsewhere and see who's out of contract, who can you get in a Brighton-esque way from Ecuador, who, before you know where they are, is absolutely brilliant, but you've only paid 8 million quid for them, so on and so forth. Can you do one of them? And it's interesting to me, someone tweeted, I can't remember, one of the transfer journalists tweeted about the idea Liverpool are looking at doing Bellingham and maybe 2 South American players. And everyone saw that as, does it mean the nationality South American, or do they mean literally from South America? And one of the things the Brexit thing does is the idea of buying from Europe as a positive, because you've not got to worry about the EU status of players because you're in the EU, is, well, but if we can get, like, for instance, if we'd have bought Caicedo when Brighton buy him for whatever price Brighton pay, then right now we'd all be laughing our heads off. But they could also get a work permit for him. You can now get work permits for those players a little bit easier, but it's harder to get work permits for some European players. So is there an argument to sort of go to the source a little bit more, do Bellingham and maybe roll the dice on 2 at 8 million? One of whom might be great, one of whom might just be a bit of a nightmare and play some League Cup games, and then we farm him off. That's a very long answer.
Yes or no? I think he was looking for it. Yeah. Now, one thing you saw, you touching on then as well, you saw when Tottenham sold Bale, didn't you? I think they went for the 5-player model. I don't think it worked very well for them, did they? So, I think a lot of people would be siding with the fact of going break the bank on Bellingham. And maybe while we're talking about transfers.
I was going to say, arguably us, when we sold Suarez, a lot of that money went into just, basically buying half of Southampton. So, it's a similar situation there.
Yeah. Well, I think we were going to ask you about Klopp and possible future jobs and what he could do, but I think you kind of touched on that before. So maybe if we're staying on transfers, well, obviously we don't have a sporting director come the end of the year. Is maybe Klopp looking at becoming a bit more involved in that? Do you reckon we need someone to replace a Julian Ward, or can we go back to the old style of when Shankly used to pick his men, and maybe Klopp can do that now, go and name his few players? What would you prefer we did?
No, I think you'll always have. I think Liverpool will want that structure where there will be someone in as a sporting director. It's perfectly valid. Thinking about Jürgen's life, Jürgen's life since the age of 18, 19, as in the documentary, has been basically spent on training grounds. So if Jürgen, at the age of 56, I think he is now, maybe a bit older, if Jürgen, I should probably know that, if Jürgen, feels as though he wants to do a bit more stuff that's office-based, leave some bits and pieces to others, that's exactly the journey that, for instance, Alex Ferguson went on, became more of a general manager type. I think there's room for that, but what I do think is that Liverpool will always want, I think, now to have the idea that there's different departmental responsibilities, and one of those departmental responsibilities is obviously whoever's in charge of recruitment. Now, Klopp always said from the minute he came in, well, I'm I'm in charge ultimately. Like, I sign off on everything. That's the way this will work. But I'll listen to people. I'll listen to voices. And it seems to me as though, for one reason or another, Liverpool Klopp will be listening to maybe a few different voices as we get into the second half of this season and into the summer and then the start of the season that follows. But there's being Jürgen Klopp, I'm sure right now, and having been Jürgen Klopp for many a year, I'm sure because of the nature of how involved he was at everything at Mainz and Dortmund, I'm sure he's already feels like he's working 16 hours a day. He almost certainly will not want something else whacked onto his list. So I think that there will be someone who heads that up from a Liverpool point of view. Hopefully they'll be good. It might be that Liverpool feel as though they need to have gone into a different direction, but it might be that they don't. It might be that they want to get different sort of data analysts in. It might be that they want to get similar ones, but a couple of people want to move on. It's also perfectly valid to sort of use the Ian Graham example, that he's done what he's done at Liverpool there for years. And you sort of get to, you get to want to have a different job for a period. There might be some other stuff in there. Someone, literally the fella in accounts, might do your head in. And you might have decided, well, I could just do with a break from that. And you feel as though it's a good time to move on because you're highly rated within the industry you work in. For these people, it is a job, it is a workplace. And I think that for us, it's a passion. And, we're the lucky ones really more than they are. But it does feel a little bit like, in a bit of a way, how we end up dividing all this up. I think Liverpool thought last season would be more transitional than it was. I think if you think about the start of the season when Elliott's playing a lot of games and then he gets the injury, if you think about the journey the season went on, where, across the weeks, we don't go into that season trying to win a quadruple. We go into every season theoretically trying to win a quadruple, but not trying to win a quadruple. And then all of a sudden we get the other side of AFCON and we've got a final on the horizon, a pretty nice cup draw, and other things have gone quite nicely for us in the FA Cup. A pretty nice last 16 Champions League draw, and City just go and drop points on a Monday night at Crystal Palace. And I think Liverpool were ready for it to be a little bit of a transitional season, maybe a season where the last 4 or 5 league games, you're guaranteed second or third. You're going to hopefully push on in Europe, etc., etc. And all of a sudden it becomes, no, you can do the impossible. And I think that's something we've not really allowed for. And I think if you look at, for instance, the journey they might... So, in that realm where City are out of sight, maybe in the second half of the season, you do see more tactical experimentation, as we've seen at the start of this. Maybe you do see more Elliott. Maybe you do see more Jones. Maybe you do see more Chamberlain, because Liverpool are resting people for the midweeks because the European challenge is the main thing that's in there. But instead, they get the opportunity to do something no one else has ever done, and they commit to it wholeheartedly. So I think in all of this, when we try to think about what they do or don't want as a job and the direction of travel that they're moving in, it might well be that Paris, for a variety of other reasons as well, including off the pitch stuff, is sort of the end of something. And this has been the start of something new. And then if you do work at the club, you might think to yourself, well, maybe it is a good time for me to move on because I was part of the thing that ended at Paris. This is now the start of something new. And maybe we won't see all of this to fruition in terms of full league titles and European Cups until 2025. But I've got a job, I've got kids, I've got a partner, I've got whatever, I've got a pension. And I might just think, well, I'll go somewhere else and start something else. I've already done this one once. Do I need to do another one? And I think we need to allow that sort of human response. I think that Jürgen himself would allow that human response. And rather than go, oh my God, is everything falling apart? It may well be just something that happens in a project-based workplace where people then move on once they feel as though, well, I've completed that project. What's next for me in my life and my opportunities?
Yeah. Well, paying tribute to the spirit of Jürgen Klopp, I believe our very own Pete has a round of questions for us.
Yeah,
I think, Anil, are you familiar with the Pete quiz?
I've been briefed.
You've been briefed. Oh, excellent.
Well, we've been revising the
quiz.
Yeah.
Go on.
We got graphics and everything. Right, so simple one, quick one. I know no one wants to hear me talk on this bit, so it's just a simple quiz. It's about Jürgen Klopp. Your documentary is, so is this one. 5 questions. I'm not trying to catch it out, so don't worry. I've gone for some maybe more silly ones, so don't worry. So you can't be. I'm not trying to make you look bad. So
that's all right. I'm used to it.
Have you got a pen and paper? Is that all right? And then we'll go through the answers at the end. I'll just ask you question 1 to 5, and I do have a tiebreaker. So don't worry if it all gets tied up at the end. But anyway, so question number 1, without further ado. How many league titles has Jürgen Klopp won in his entire managerial career? So over all the clubs he's managed, how many league titles has he won? Write them down. Don't say them out loud. Play along at home by not saying it out loud. And if you're ready for the next question, here's a good fact for you. Both Jürgen Klopp's dad, Norbert, and son, Mark, have played football, but in which position did either of them play on the football pitch? They both weren't at a high level. I think his dad was only amateur, and Mark was like in the lower leagues of Germany. But they both had a specific position they played. And I won't just take like midfield up front. You've got to do like an actual position, like centre back, right back, goalkeeper, centre mid, defensive mid, striker, wing, something like that. Okay, that's question 2. Question number 3. In feet and inches, how tall is Jürgen Klopp? And as a helpful hint for you, it's roughly the same height as 3 German shepherds. If that helps, if you know your German shepherd facts. Feet and inches, see the way it's German as well, because he's German. It's all on theme here today. Feet and inches, how tall is Jürgen Klopp? Ready? Question 4. On the 1st of July 2016, the first players in Klopp's stewardship left the club on the same day. There were 6 different players who left the club when the contract came to an end. Can you name any of them? 1st of July 2016. There were 6 different players. Just give me one name, and if you're right, you get a point. If you get all 6, you still get a point, but you'll feel very proud of yourself. We ready for question 5?
Yeah.
Here we go. Last one. Jürgen Klopp has reached 9 cup finals as Liverpool manager, but in which 2 competitions has he reached more than 1 final? So obviously on more than 1 occasion he was in the cup final. Which 2 competitions were he? 9 finals in total since he's arrived. And that's your quiz. Let me know when you're ready to go through the answers.
Two or more. So
yeah, he's been in more. Yeah, 2 or more finals in 2 separate competitions. Which ones were he? Okay. Ready for the answers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, right. So, first one, question 1. How many league titles has Klopp won in his managerial career? Shout it out.
3.
Yeah, 3.
3 is correct. Yeah. Farrell, 3. Rick, 3.
I'm reluctant to give answers.
Next one. Question 2. Question 2. You can tell me either Norbert or Mark. Where did they play? Guess, or if you know.
I don't know what I'm goalkeeper.
Left wing goalkeeper. Farrell.
Holding midfielder.
One of these is correct. Norbert was a goalkeeper.
Hey.
Mark was a right back. So just 1 point over to Neil. Taking the lead, embarrassing the Empire of the Cop. Question 3. Feet and inches, how tall is Jürgen Klopp?
6'4".
He's 6'2".
I put 6'3".
Oh, they're all close. One of you is right. According to Wikipedia, which we all know is always correct. 6'3". Rick.
Hey.
You see, I think, not just on Jürgen, I think that all football, like wrestlers, put in different ways, all footballers' published heights are lies.
Yeah,
all of them. They're all lies. But I think they measure them once when they're like 17, and then that's the height of the footballer forever.
It should just say just tall.
Yeah. He's a big lad.
There was a period of time, I think, when like Wikipedia had Henderson's height at 5'11", and I'm 6'/6'1", that sort of area. And I met Henderson once, and I was like, all right. Absolutely.
You must be massive. No, you're 6'3". That's what it is. So, on the 1st of July 2016, 6 different players left. Do you want to say whoever you put, and I'll give you all 6?
Torre.
Colo. Yeah.
Yeah, Colo Torre.
Rick.
1.
Yeah, that's fine.
I missed the question, so I didn't put anything down. I was still thinking about that.
2016, wasn't it? You said.
Yep.
I feel like I'm awfully
Conor
wrong
Randall?
on this, but like.
Conor Randall 1?
Yep. Farrell said name. I'll give you the point on that.
Was Benteke 1?
Benteke was not 1.
So
Neil got 1. So I'll give you the full list was Jose Enrique, Colo Torre, Jordan Rossiter, man, I get a bit harder, João Teixeira, Jerome Sinclair, and Samad Yessel. The start of the League Cup game against Swansea. Oh. But yeah, so I think Neil's got the point there. So it's 3 to Neil, 2 to Rick, 1 to Farrell. And we go into the last question. Jürgen Klopp has reached 9 cup finals as Liverpool manager. In which competitions has he been to more than 1 final? Pretty easy, this one.
Champions League and
League Cup, isn't it?
Yeah, Champions League, League Cup.
Full house. Everyone's right. The Anfield wrap. 1. Empire of the Cop, 0.
Absolutely embarrassing, lads. Absolutely
Go upstairs, tell the firm they'll be delighted. Top.
Well, that has been the Peak Quiz. Burst my eardrum. Right, we come full circle back to the documentary. Just lastly, part 1 is out now. There are 4 parts remaining. Neil, you told us you've not seen the remaining parts, but
I've seen a cut.
I assume you've got a good idea of what's to come.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, this is Pete's question. I've nicked this one. But how did you firstly go about getting in touch with all his old coaches and teammates and mates? And did everyone love him, or is there some bad blood to come yet?
No, everyone loves him, and that's why it's great that we're unofficial in a way, because genuinely we can say that from an unofficial perspective. Everyone's only got hugely positive things to say about him. Now, I'm sure that not everyone he's ever met, obviously, but people coming forward and doing the documentary, they all love him to pieces. I love the older people, the people who've obviously had an influence on him, because I love that when with the talking in the first episode, and they still come back in other episodes where you can see how Jürgen's like them, rather than there's a lot of people who become like Jürgen, but Jürgen's like them. It's like, I really like that about them, and they've been brilliant. And we just reached out really to everyone we could think of, and every single phase we could think of, and had huge amounts of positivity back, and because people want to talk about him, because he's an important sporting and cultural figure, but also everyone likes him, and they want to pay tribute to him, pay homage to him, and talk about him. And everyone also feels a real connection to him, and they want to talk about that connection. So that's great. And then episode 1 is done, and people can see it. It's on YouTube now. Please do watch it, and we are delighted and we are proud of it. And then episode 2 and 3 will be out on our app. Episode 2 on Monday the 12th, and episode 3 on Monday the 19th. The second episode is about the blueprint, so what he first does or did when he arrived in each of these 3 clubs, and where there's a bit of influence around that. And then episode 3 is around the idea of the building blocks of the journey. So we haven't confirmed the title yet, which is how sort of we're flying through this, but this real sense of how, for instance, he pulled his recruitment pieces then into place, and then how the journey in each of these places, it was never all unbelievably plain sailing. There was ups and downs, and how he had to learn a thing or two, and had to learn something from some defeats. So yeah, that's the journey, therefore, of the building blocks, and how he amassed all of that. What's what episode 3 is going to be about. As I say, episode 2 is on the blueprint and how he works, and there's some fantastic stuff in that, and in terms of in Mainz, in Dortmund, and in Liverpool. And episode 1 is out, and it is about the challenge that he faced in each of these 3 places, and it's almost got a subtitle that you can't see on the subtitle, which is the challenge and the challenger. So the first 10 minutes doesn't even mention Jürgen once, but then it details what Mainz, Dortmund and Liverpool were each like. And then we get 10 minutes on Jürgen, Glatten, Frankfurt, his background and the nature of him. And then we find out the moments he's going to go into each of these 3 football clubs. And so it's the challenge, and Jürgen is the challenger.
Well, Neil, thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. And I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're very much looking forward to the rest of the documentary as when it comes out. Thanks again to our special guest, Rick Elliott, the Anfield Raps, Neil Atkinson, for both coming on to the Empire of the Cup podcast. Of course, we've had Peter Kenny Jones, myself, Farrell Keeling. If you haven't seen Jürgen Part 1, The Challenge, go do it. It's phenomenal. The work that has gone into it is absolutely bonkers. We've been the Empire of the Cup. Take care.